The 9th of January was Police Officer Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And for that, we're going to smoke an Appreciation Day grapefruit diesel joint while we do this report. Um, so, also fresh off the presses for this day to honor the law enforcement officers of this country, we have a Pew Research Center study that they've been conducting, and this study came out talking about how police officers these days, well, they really aren't like as hardline against marijuana as maybe they used to be, or maybe people perceive them to be. I'm going to go ahead and vouch for that because I just got back from going to the store real quick. And on my way there, I got pulled over. And I'm in Michigan, which is a medical marijuana state. And recently, they just came out with a court ruling saying that you can have your marijuana in your cockpit if you have a medical marijuana card. Instead, well, I mean, that seems like it's a no-brainer, but they made this law up after we passed our law, and their law said that you had to have it in a locked box in the trunk or whatever. So they changed it, or they didn't change it, but a case went through, and the person took it to the appeals court, and they ruled that hey, or maybe it was even a district court, but either way, you can smell like weed, and you can have weed in your cockpit. I wouldn't have a burnt roach sitting right next to your ashtray or whatever, but it's the officer's discretion on how far to go. Now, he pulled me over, and to be honest, it was kind of cryptic. I really didn't know why. He didn't never really explain it. He said that he seen my car parked at the end of my driveway, and that it was running, and that there's a lot of thievery going on in my neighborhood. So, I mean, I put it all together, and then he kind of remembered after that he probably patrols the area from time to time. He has seen my car. It's always at the end of the driveway. I have a gate. I'm one of the only people in my neighborhood that has one, and so therefore I always end up leaving it out at the end of the road because I'm kind of lazy, to be honest. So anyway, he smelled weed, which was kind of weird because I didn't smoke any. I literally just left my house. He pulled me over about a mile, not even a mile from my house. He was behind me almost the whole time I pulled off the road to the main road, off my road. And it's very likely I smelled like weed. I smoked one probably about 20 minutes before I left. Um, so, and I don't know if I smell like weed. I'm going to tell you guys out there, you don't know if you smell like weed either. A police officer that don't smoke weed, that's one of the loudest noises that you're going to make is smelling like weed. But several times throughout this incident, he just said he didn't care. He's like, let me see your med card. I smell weed. That was the first thing he said. And I'm like, shit, weed? What? I don't got no weed. But I was never worried, but he kind of reassured me, which I don't really believe cops when they say, oh, don't worry, tell me the truth and we'll go from there and I'll make it easy on you or whatever. I don't believe cops when they say stuff because it's just their job to get at the heart of the matter. No one made a rule that said cops have to tell you the absolute truth. So I don't dock them for that, but I don't trust them either. So I'm just like, okay, here's my med card, and he explained this break-in thing, and also in my neighborhood, just recently, my neighbor had some window peepers, which is kind of weird, but you know, between that and these apparently a string of break-ins in my neighborhood, the police officer did say, so that's what he was worried about. And then obviously he took my license and went back and checked it. I guess that's pretty standard procedure. So I have no problem with this pullover or many other pullovers that I've had in my life. I have had a lot of bad ones. I used to have really long hair. Um, it was like getting searched every time automatically when you get pulled over. It's like, up, search. You know you're getting searched. So that's how that went down. Um, all in all, I don't have a problem with police officers. I don't like. I'm not anti-police. I feel like police are necessary. Most of the time, I'm not going to call them if something happens because, in my experience in this area I live in, the Flint area of Michigan, things like break-ins and robberies and stuff like that never gets solved. I want to go even further in this area and say that stuff like homicides and rapes don't get solved either. But, you know, it's not the police officer's fault. You know, they can't do everything. They can't know everything. They can't investigate a crime and get to the bottom of every crime. So here we have 7 in 10 officers support allowing medical use of marijuana. That's 37%. Or they favor the legalization of the drug for both personal and medical use, which is 32%. And this is the conclusion of a Pew Research study that they've been conducting. The report itself is a 97-page document that you can download on the Pew Research website. And then they had a summary article on their website, which basically broke it down. It's called Behind the Badge, Among Protests and Calls for Reform, How Police View Their Jobs, Key Issues, and Recent Fatal Encounters Between Blacks and Police. And I'm not going to cover anything else in this whole report except for the one key thing that my channel is focused on, and that's the marijuana issue, or the drug war in general. Now, in this case, you might tie that in with the violence in the black community by the police. But at the same time, the biggest tie-in I have there, and I'm not going to exploit it in this video, is that, in fact, when marijuana is an option for police to enforce, they're going to, when they find it, then they become a different person. Now, tonight, this officer reassured me several times that he didn't care about the marijuana. And even if I didn't have a card, he said he didn't care. Because he kept saying, let me see your card, and I was fumbling for it because I have several cards, and I was trying to find the one that was actually mine. I don't know if he's seen the deck of cards I was shuffling, but he basically said, you know, I don't care, and he started walking away, and then I'm like, oh, I found it, and then he kind of reached back and grabbed it like half-habert. He didn't even care. And I don't think he was going to pursue that anyway. I mean, if I smelled like marijuana, it seems like he'd want to search. But now maybe the police have gotten the memo in Michigan about this court case and how they're not really supposed to do this, ticket people for having marijuana in their car in the cockpit or not in a lockbox in the trunk. So basically, let's look at the methodology for this report. And what I was saying about the minority community, police treat you a lot differently once they find marijuana on you, and I don't think that should be a thing, you know? Like, you've seen situations where police may have roughed somebody up or even killed them, and they're like, oh, marijuana, he was bad, we found marijuana, or he used marijuana. Like, even stuff like when Trayvon Martin got shot by the Zimmerman, you know, immediately the marijuana stuff about Trayvon Martin comes out. That was like one of the main things that they used to paint him as not the most innocent kid that others were trying to portray him as, such as his parents. But anyway, I don't want to get into other issues on this channel. A lot of people might want to ask me where my politics are. I mean, this might be a hint a little bit, but I'm just not into. On this channel, I'm not going to talk about too many other issues in general, so it really doesn't matter where I sit on politics. It shouldn't. And when I say stuff about right-wingers, it's because when it comes to the issue that I'm talking about on this channel, the drug war, they're the ones that are doing everything they can to stall legalizing marijuana. They're totally against any kind of rational decriminalization proposals on other drugs. Which, you know, you can't say that you're for compassion and you're for anything else unless you're saying that you're for treatment for drug addicts rather than incarceration. Jails and prisons they're not the place to expect people that are addicted to drugs to get clean. So I'm just going to go over this methodology real quickly. Most of the data in this report came from online interviews completed by 7,917 enforcement officers from 54 police and sheriff's departments across the United States. Of these, 6,795 interviews came from 43 municipal police departments, and 1,122 interviews came from 11 county sheriff's departments. The survey administered between May 19th and August 14th, 2016. The study was conducted by the National Police Research Platform, NPRP, a consortium of researchers and practitioners around the country headquartered at the University of Illinois in Chicago during the study period. The sample is designed and weighted to represent the population of officers who work in agencies that employ at least 100 full-time sworn law enforcement officers with general arrest powers. Now, the cop that pulled me over tonight was a Genesee County police officer, and they have an actual branch office right in my little tiny small town. The town that I live in does not have 100 full-time employees, especially sworn law enforcement officers. Now, the county office might, because I don't know if they have just like a core group of the same county police that work there, or if they revolve around the area and go from county police station to county police station to the jail. I don't even know. I have no idea how they do it. I don't know how many of these county guys work in my small town of less than 5,000 people or something. I don't know. It's a pretty small town. So anyway, they would not be called. They probably wouldn't have gotten a phone call for this survey, basically. Maybe because it's Genesee County, where Flint, Michigan is located. And Flint, Michigan has not had any kind of problems with police violence against the minority community that I'm aware of. I'm sure there is somewhere a complaint, but I'm not aware of anything like that. There's definitely hasn't been any high profile stuff like that happening. And that's about it for that first paragraph summarized what the whole rest of the methodology section contains. And the methodology section basically just irons out how they did the study and how they use other methods and like weights to make it clean so it's legit. And then here's the final numbers I already told you. I'm going to read this out because it's a little bit worded longer. There's more stuff to the percentages and more things that weren't mentioned in the meme. So as jurisdictions move towards decriminalize or legalize the private use of marijuana by adults, large majorities of the police and public favor easing restrictions on the drug. However, a larger share of the public than police favor legalizing marijuana for personal and medical use. That's 49% of the public versus 32% of the police. I don't know where they got this number because we've seen numbers from Gallup and other people that do nothing but polling that have this number for the public at somewhere in the 60s. Overall, about 7 in 10 officers support allowing medical use of marijuana, 37%, or favor the legalization of the drug for both personal and medical use, 32%. The public is more favorably inclined than police towards relaxing marijuana laws. More than 8 in 10 Americans support either legalizing marijuana for 49% or allowing only medical use of the drug, which is only 35%. The survey, it's a little misleading. You got to add those together. But when they ask somebody and they're like, "Oh, only medical," that's what you should have said. And then you ask somebody, "Okay, what about recreational?" No, just medical. But still, they're still saying legalize something. And then if you add those all up, it's It's 84%. So the surveys found little support among public for outlawing marijuana use under any circumstances. That was 15%. However, police are twice as likely as all adults to favor an outright ban on the drug. And that's 30%, which is almost 1 out of 3 of every police officer. And when I was going to say it, but I guess I should just read it. As with younger adults generally, officers younger than 35 are more likely than those 50 to 60 to favor permitting personal and medical use of marijuana, 37% versus 27%. Among the public, the majority of adults, 63%, under the age of 45, favor legalization. Police say no more changes need to achieve racial equality. The public is what's divided. I don't know why I read that. It's just there. But so there you have it. 1 in 3 cops still want to arrest everybody that has marijuana in their pocket, no matter what the problem is, whether it's medical or recreational. 30%. Now, the 15% of adults, or not adults, but just regular everyday people that aren't cops, the 15% of them that feel that way, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a really weird limb and say that they're all over 60. They're all like older than 60, probably older than 70. In fact, there's a lot of studies coming out now. I don't know if it's just polling data or general studies, but a lot of older people are smoking marijuana more than ever before. In fact, I think the numbers of we're in on marijuana smokers 35 to 45 for the first time ever there's more of them than there are the younger block, which would be teenagers all the way up to did I say 35? Yeah, 35. And when I first seen that, I kind of giggled, and I'm like, well, maybe it's because for the first time ever, my generation just kept smoking instead of everybody quitting for jobs or they got families and stuff that happened to my parents, because the drug war just scared them right out of the game. But what it really is as marijuana laws are relaxed, it's not the rebel, yay, it's not like I'm going to go out and do something crazy because I'm an outlaw and stuff that kids do. That's the mentality that gets kids doing a lot of drugs. And it's the experimenting with drugs thing. It's something that society's got to admit is a real part of growing up. I mean, you can't deny it. It's just a part of growing up. And if you're gonna sit here and say it ain't, then you're denying human nature, and you can't. Like, I just recently seen where Trump's pick for Homeland Security, I forget who that is, but he apparently said something along the lines of, in order to win the drug war, we have to work on decreasing the demand. Ain't that what you've been trying to do for the last 40 years with all the raids and the busting of people for possession and, filling up your prisons with drug offenders instead of just people that do crimes against other people? What is going on? Well, anyway, I'm going to try to end this, but before we do, in case you didn't know, I'm going to give you the background of this photo here for the meme. The big picture where this police officer over here on the right, and then you got this old hippie-looking guy over here, and the cop is handing him a bag of Doritos. And this was in Seattle at, I believe it was the Hemp Fest, the year that they legalized recreational marijuana. And also that year, this photo here with the little girl and the cop with the marijuana plant was also taken because of Seattle, or because of Washington State's legalization. I'm not positive on that. Don't quote me. That's the one I wasn't sure of. And then there's this cop in here smoking a bong. I think that was taken during a raid where the police were walking around, goofing around, pretending like they were smoking bongs. It looks more like he's trying to play a saxophone or something. And they were like eating medibles too. Whoops. They were actually on film because the law says that dispensaries have to have cameras everywhere. And obviously they got in trouble, I think, maybe. And then back here in the back, you have Samuel, the first guy to ever get busted for marijuana. And it was in Colorado. And I'll do a story about that when I do it, like a little thing about the history of... I'm going to try to do a little clip about the history of marijuana prohibition. And I'm going to try to be as quick as I can about it. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just blabbing off now. But there it is, 7 and 10. Police officers want to relax this whole idea that marijuana is something that you should throw someone in jail for, no matter whether they're using it for recreational purposes or medical purposes.